Hey, a note before we begin. We originally released this Us and Them episode in July 2022. People in this story honestly talk about gender and body parts, and they share their experience with thoughts of suicide and self-harm. This episode might not be for all listeners.
People should be free to enter into any kind of relationship they want to enter into.
My mind is open to taking some action that will address those elements of unfairness while respecting the traditional religious and civil institution of marriage.
I'm not for gay marriage. I think marriage is a sacred institution between a man and a woman.
Candidates in the 2000 presidential election are sharing their views on gay marriage. George W. Bush is opposed. Even the Democratic candidates won't go so far as to support same-sex marriage, but they do support civil unions. In 2004, President George W. Bush supports a constitutional amendment to prevent any future legalization of same-sex marriage.
Today, I want to explain why I support the Marriage Protection Amendment and why I'm urging Congress to pass it.
That bill passes the Republican-controlled House, but not the Senate.
No, Barack Obama nor I support redefining from a civil side what constitutes marriage.
It's 2008. And Joe Biden confirms that neither he nor Barack Obama support same-sex marriage. But on May 9th, 2012, in an interview with ABC News, Barack Obama becomes the first sitting president to do just that.
For me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
3 years later, history is made.
Celebrations erupted on the steps of the Supreme Court.
Today's ruling settles the issue of same-sex marriage nationwide.
The 5-4 vote, in many ways reflecting the huge societal shift of the last 20 years. President saying today there are days like this when that slow, steady effort is rewarded with justice that arrives like a thunderbolt.
There was something about 2015 and the legalization of same-sex marriage that felt like resolution. After decades of division over LGBTQ rights, it seemed like we had reached, consensus. But over the last couple of years, lawmakers across the country have shifted their focus. New laws in a number of states now restrict the team transgender athletes can compete on. It's a battle that spotlights a much smaller and much more vulnerable population in the LGBTQ community. From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them, the show that tells stories about the things that divide us. I'm Trey Kay. In this episode, we'll take a deeper look at a wave of legislation aimed at transgender people in the United States. Are we seeing a pendulum swing, a reaction to the winds of the past decade? What's the political motivation behind targeting a small group of people with so many new laws? We'll meet people at the center of this debate.
Last week, Alabama became the third state in the nation to pass a measure restricting gender-affirming care for transgender and non-binary youth.
It is the latest fight over transgender rights. And once again, the epicenter is Texas.
Lawmakers worked late into the night Saturday, finalizing the 85th legislative session for West Virginia.
Some controversial bills included the transgender student-athlete restriction on which teams they can play.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Megyn Kelly, and we begin today with the question of whether transgender high school girls should be allowed to race on high school girls' track teams.
I just want everyone to know that we're not here to steal your titles, your scholarships, your trophies. All we want is just to be included.
In 3 years, more than a dozen states have enacted laws banning transgender girls from playing on girls' sports teams. 3 states have limited gender-affirming health care for trans youth. That's any medical care or treatment that supports the gender they identify with. And it can include the use of hormone therapy. And those are just the laws that have passed. In 2021 alone, lawmakers in 33 states introduced 100 bills that in some way curb transgender rights. Advocacy groups say it was a record-breaking year. And 2022 is shaping up to surpass it. Now, we're going to get into these laws, and we'll hear from a Republican senator who supports them.
I could tell you, even though I was one of the better girl runners on my team, the slowest boy could still beat me.
And a political fundraiser who sees them as a powerful tool.
We really wanted to see if this was an effective way to shift voters.
But first, it's always seemed easier to me to ignore the nuance of an issue if you don't know much about it, especially if you don't know anyone who's affected by it. And in fact, a Pew Research poll finds fewer than half of Americans know someone who is transgender. A Gallup poll puts that number at only 31%. So, before we talk issues, I'd like to introduce you to some people.
This is a very small neighborhood. It's basically a cul-de-sac. It's closed on both ends. This is exactly where I grew up and played.
You described yourself, what, as a tomboy? Is that what you...
Oh, yeah, big time tomboy. I mean, I was taking like tools out of my dad's shed in the back and like banging rusty nails together, trying to make a ramp, and I just wanted to go fast and go far.
On a beautiful Saturday in Bethel, Connecticut, a couple of months ago, I sat down with Taylor Edelman. I sought Taylor out because he has a story that's relevant to these laws that we're talking about. He was a transgender college athlete. He played from 2009 to 2013. At first, Taylor competed on the women's volleyball team. Then he transitioned to the men's squad.
I always like to start with my pronouns. Pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a harm reductionist, healthcare worker, community health worker, a trans athlete, even though I haven't played sports in probably, I would say competitively in like the last decade.
Would you tell me about when you first felt like you were in the wrong body, the wrong gender?
You know, when we talk about trans folks, I've had to inform myself a lot is when we talk about this concept of like being in the wrong body, right? Where now I would challenge that and say, I'm in the correct body. The issue is the world around me, the way that the world perceived me, and that trans bodies, there's nothing inherently wrong with trans bodies, right?
Still, Taylor felt like something was wrong at a young age, but he didn't have words for it.
My mom always tells me this story, and I have a fuzzy memory. Two of my brothers were in the bath, and I said to my mom, I'm like, you cut mine off. You took mine away. Where is mine? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, what? And then my mom had this moment like, oh my God, I don't know maybe what to do with this. And so it was a lot of series of events like that where I shied away from anything that maybe had to do with my genitalia or with femininity.
Can you just take me to that moment? You actually felt like something had been taken away from you, male genitalia. And how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, I remember specifically having suicidal thoughts in the shower at 10, 11 years old. I mean, no child. I have an 8-year-old, and I can't even imagine thinking of what I was going through because I had nobody out at that time. I mean, this was the 90s. So just imagine feeling like you're stuck in a world where you don't see anybody like you. You're in this small town. I mean, I was suffering alone. Even though there was all this noise, right? Everything was very cacophonous in my childhood. There was a lot of banter. There was a lot of sports. Sports were my saving grace, but I was suffering every day when I would go to sleep alone. And that was my least favorite time of day.
I'd like to know, you know this about yourself. Something doesn't feel right. At what point did you start playing sports? And was that part of kind of coping with this confusion, or was it just something separate?
No, sports really coincided with, I think, me feeling as a really little kid that I was maybe different. I started playing t-ball when I was like 4. I mean, I really owe sports everything because I think I would have had a very different outcome and I wouldn't be here giving this talk, having this conversation without sports, because it kept me so busy, and it was a way to channel that intense energy that I had, all that dysphoria. I can control the ball. I can control what I'm doing, my body, and nobody's telling me what I need to do with my body. And instead, a body that I hate, people are loving because it's producing, it's performing well, to the point where I'm an all-state volleyball player. I'm an all-state softball player. I don't think I was ever saying to myself, oh, I want to play sports because I feel more like a man or I feel more masculine. I think it was just, I'm really good at this thing. It's allowing a distraction for me, because if I'm sitting at home all day, I'm literally going to think about self-harm.
Taylor remembers the first time he started coming to terms with his own gender identity.
I was on the women's volleyball team and everything was very gendered, even though I was a very androgynous person. So I remember saying to my suite mates, I'm like, look, I'm feeling some type of way. I'm feeling like I'm coming into my own. I don't really know how to process this. And one of them said, hey, there's a trans group on campus. Why don't you go check it out? And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like an imposter. So I go to the meeting. They're like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, hey, I'm Taylor. I don't really know if I'm supposed to be here. And then we start talking and they start saying all these things that resonate with me, like, oh, you know, I want to have facial hair, or, you know, I feel self-conscious about my chest, or, you know, people think that maybe I'm a lesbian or I'm gay, but, you know, I don't feel that way. I feel like it has more to do with my gender. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is what I'm feeling.
SUNY Purchase is one of the schools in the New York State University system. Purchase is a D3 school, and they recruited Taylor to play on the women's volleyball team.
What was that experience like, playing on this women's team at SUNY Purchase?
So I was on the women's team for 2 years. And by my second year, I was growing more uncomfortable, you know, just little things on the court. And nobody meant anything by this. They say like, yeah, girl, or like, yeah, you know, good job, girly, or something like that. And those things I would just kind of shudder at. I'm attending these trans groups, these other spaces where I feel affirmed and safe, and now I'm gaining language, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm putting the pieces together. Fortunately, there's the same coach for the women's team as the men's team, and you know, he's a good guy. I said to him, I said, look, Bill, I'm trans, and I am just kind of coming to this realization, and I feel supported enough by this school that I want to play on the men's team. How do I do that? I know, you know, I'm going to be going on hormones. How do I do all this?
Taylor's coach and his school were supportive.
What's so funny about it is I didn't realize that what I was doing was such a big deal. I just really desperately wanted to keep playing sports. So I said, well, my life is changing, so now my sports life has to then change with it.
So what was it like making that transition?
So August 1st, 2011 was my first hormone injection, and still today I'm on hormones, I'm taking them, and that's what I want to do.
Taylor's experiences began to shift as he went through gender-affirming care, which included hormones and therapy. He also started hitting the gym to get ready for his transition to the men's team. One day, one of his new teammates came up and introduced himself.
And he was like, okay, well, I heard you're trans. And I'm like, yeah, I am actually. And he's like, okay, I don't really know how I feel about that, but you know, welcome to the team. As we played the next 2 years, his emotions and feelings toward me changed quite a bit. We had grown pretty close, even though our political ideals were completely different. And, you know, he tried to challenge me on a number of things. He really said that he liked very much he liked Taylor, the person that I am. And then he was like, wow, you really changed my perspective on, you know, gender identity, and me maybe thinking it was like weird or like a freakish thing. And I mean, I'm unapologetically me. You accept it, you like it or you don't, and that's it. And he just kind of rolled with it.
That teammate wasn't the only one who took the time to talk and listen and understand. Taylor's senior year in the 2013 season, he was voted captain of the men's volleyball team. Looking back, Taylor can see how significant the transition from the women's team to the men's was for his health and his whole being.
And somebody at one point had put a picture from my pre-transition, post-transition of, you know, the women's and men's team together. And I was looking at that, I'm like, look at the confidence. The level just of intensity and confidence is different, because I was not fully there. I'm not a woman. I don't feel like a woman. I've never felt like a woman, and now I'm realizing this, but I'm on a women's team.
What do you think about the laws prohibiting transgender athletes from playing on the team of their own gender?
Yeah. I mean, to put it plainly, I hate them. I think they're reductive. I wish that my experience could have been the experience that everybody had. Trans athletes want to play sports like anybody else, and we're such a small percentage of the people that play sports, first of all, that it makes no sense to me. We're not taking up space. We're not taking trophies that belong to other folks. And people make this big stink about it, saying that we're ruining or we're kind of like watering down the sport, when I think we're enhancing it, because we're allowing people more representation, more bodies, more visibility, and telling kids that they don't have to cut their careers short, and saying that we're able to participate at a level that's just as good or better than other athletes.
Much of the debate over transgender athletes focuses on whether trans women have a competitive advantage over other women. Taylor Edelman approaches that question with a different lens.
What that person is basically saying is like, I don't see this person as a woman. I don't see this, they don't fit my definition of what a woman is. And I think maybe that's when we need to have a conversation with that person about who is a woman and who's not a woman, who's a man and who's not a man.
Now that you're a person who works in health equity, what are your thoughts on the climate in the U.S. and the wave of legislation that is targeting transgender rights?
This is not an isolated thing. You know, there's a reason that we're seeing this huge spate of legislation, because a lot of these states, a lot of the people in the GOP are saying, all right, this is the time to hop on. We're going to play into this culture war. We're going to separate people.
It sounds to me like you're saying this fear is being ginned up for political impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, trans folks have been around for centuries, and we've always been pushed and relegated kind of to the back.
We know that transgender youth are incredibly vulnerable as a group. Looking back, what support are you glad that you had?
I think the biggest support that I can easily say that I'm glad I had was the support of my family. They were always backing me up, and they were always cheering and rooting me on. I'm literally sitting in the house that I was raised in. If my experience was so bad and traumatic for me, I would not quite literally be sitting here. But the reason I am is because I love my parents, they love me, and throughout all the BS and all the hard stuff I maybe put them through, because I was mad for the longest time and I didn't realize I was mad, because I was mad at the world for not seeing me and not accepting me.
Taylor came out to his mom first when he was around 18 years old, and it was kind of an accident.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. At the time, it wasn't funny, but basically what happened is I was playing video games with my middle brother, who I'm closest to.
Taylor was in college, and he was at home over the winter break. One of the other gamers that they were playing with online used a slur for lesbian. Taylor responded, "Maybe I am," and then stormed upstairs.
So my mom went to my room and was like, your brother just told me that this happened. Like, what's going on, basically? Because we see you're irritable and you're upset. Like, what are you upset about? And I just kept saying to her, you don't understand, and you never will understand. I just shut it down. I was just putting the wall up. And she's like, make me understand. Tell me what's going on. And I said,
this sounds like a really tense moment.
Oh my gosh. It was hard. I'm not like a huge crier. I'm not an extremely emotional person, but I was trying to fight back tears. My face felt, and it's hot, it's red, you feel puffy, and she's looking at me so intently, and I just had all these emotions. I was ready to burst. And I said, Mom, I'm transgender. And I just kind of almost like recoiled a little bit, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just let it out. I can't believe I just said that. That was the scariest moment. And she looks at me and then she starts crying, and I'm like, oh no, am I going to be like, what's happening? Am I going to get kicked out?
You literally felt at that time like, oh my God, my parents are going to like disown me, going to kick me to the curb.
Happened because it just, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know, and growing up too, hearing comments, whether they were homophobic or transphobic or jokes that were made. And so that makes you stay inside yourself and feel like this is not okay. But I knew that my parents loved me. Quickly, she said, oh my gosh, is that it? I thought you were going to say you were sick or you had cancer or something. She's like, we love you, and that's totally fine.
I'm sorry, Taylor. I just got really emotional hearing that. I mean, it's like, that you at that time felt like you were going to just, I don't know, be disowned.
Oh yeah, it was like a do or die, right? It's like a flip of the coin. I could be out the door or I could be here and getting hugged, and it was the latter. It was a lot of love in that moment.
Taylor's fears were not unfounded. The Trevor Project, a nonprofit organization and leading researcher in this area, found that 16% of LGBTQ young people say they've run away from home. More than half of those say they were mistreated or were afraid of mistreatment. After a break, we'll hear from a Republican state senator in West Virginia about why she supported a law limiting which team transgender girls can play on.
That legislation essentially said that girl sports was for biological females.
We'll also talk with a Republican campaign strategist who makes no bones about why he's putting a lot of money behind this issue.
So we knew that this was an issue that moved voters and actually changed how they voted.
And we'll meet a trans woman in college who plays on the women's lacrosse and field hockey teams and tells us how much that experience means to her.
I had so much anxiety this year waking up scared that I would see an article saying, oh, Virginia passed this law, and now all of a sudden my teammates that I hang out with all the time, I can't be a part of that anymore.
You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, and the CRC Foundation.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
A note if you're just joining us, people in this story are speaking about gender and body parts, and they share their experience dealing with thoughts of suicide and self-harm. This episode may not be for all listeners. Hey, it's Trey, and this is Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. So just to get started, I'm going to get my mic in front of you. Can you tell me who are you and what do you do?
I am Patricia Rucker. I am a state senator for the 16th District, which is all of Jefferson County and part of Berkeley County in West Virginia.
Senator Patricia Rucker co-sponsored a bill in 2021 that is now law in West Virginia. It bans transgender girls from playing on girls' sports teams. Specifically, it limits girls' sports to individuals whose biological sex, determined at birth, is female. The law applies to public school and collegiate athletes.
Actually, I was a co-sponsor on the Senate version of that same legislation, and we ended up taking up the House version. But that legislation essentially said that girls' sports was for biological females. And it didn't even mention the word transgender. What we wanted to ascertain was that girls would not have to compete against boys or with boys in their areas. And to those who, brought up during the debate, well, what about, you're discriminating against transgender youth. If you guys want to do co-ed teams, that's allowed. There is no prohibition on co-ed teams. But the girls' sports that are for girls should be for biological females.
Senator Rucker says she does not think this legislation is anti-trans. She says it protects girls.
We think about the reason for Title IX, right? We think for how hard it took for women to be able to have their own sports. Because for many, many years, the boys had teams and the girls did not. The idea is to allow girls to have a chance to excel. And as we know now, Sports is crucial for teaching a lot of skills that you just cannot learn in a classroom, for example, about competition, about leadership, working together as a team.
Rutgers' experience as a young athlete really influences the way she thinks about all this.
It is a discouragement when you know that it doesn't matter how long I practice, doesn't matter how many hours I put into this, but someone else who has advantages I could never have take away the title, take away the head trophy. And I will tell you, I was a competitive runner. I did cross country and track. To make it to state meant that I was able to win some races in the county division. And man, did that make me feel good. And it doesn't matter that that was ancient history. Like, I feel very proud. I actually won some races. I can tell you, even though I was one of the better girl runners on my team, and I worked really, really, really hard, when we all ran together, which we did in practices, the slowest boy could still beat me.
Rutgers' main concern has to do with the biological advantages she believes that transgender women have because their sex assigned at birth was male.
In those areas where might and strength doesn't make that big a difference, absolutely perfectly adequate that it's just everybody together, right? Like the brain, we're good. But when it comes to physical prowess, that's where I think it really is a huge disadvantage for our young ladies.
It's been my observation that the climate towards LGBTQ rights, it's been a pendulum that seems to swing. I mean, back in 2004, it was a motivating campaign wedge issue. Then around 2014, 2015, there's a Supreme Court decision. And now it seems like the pendulum seems to be going in the other direction. And it seems as though that there seems to be a lot of political energy, especially in focusing on any legislation that would go right to transgender people.
When we were debating this bill, the media and opponents kept trying to make it about transgender youth. You're discriminating against transgender youth. And it didn't matter how many times I said to them, this is about girls knowing that they have the opportunity to compete. And it's not anti, it's not against, but like they would never accept that.
But would you agree with me that there seems to be political energy in this?
Oh, there is. There's definitely. I absolutely see it. And I hate to say it, and it may be my prejudice as a Republican, but I definitely feel they are trying to politicize it. It's a political thing that they can throw at you. They love naming Republicans as, transphobic, or you guys just don't like LGBT, because we push for policies that treat everybody the same.
Okay, because the other side would say when you connect with LGBTQ or make that an issue, that is, I don't know, preying on people's fears of people who are other, and that might motivate voters to the polls.
Well, so in my experience as somebody in politics, I could tell you there's a lot of effort to try to do special treatment for LGBT. And we usually don't really support that. It's like, we absolutely want them to not be hurt, not be, attacked, not be discriminated against, but it's everyone having those rights, not just one group.
And it seems like that you are troubled that people on the other side of the political aisle might be using it to politicize. Would you also have criticism for people in your party?
When they try to also use it as a political, yes, absolutely. Those who try to politicize it. When Republicans do it also, yes. And they absolutely do, yes.
You kind of talked about that you've been an athlete in your youth. And there is really something that is kind of great and wonderful about that experience. How do you feel about making that something that young transgender people, they're going to be excluded from that?
So absolutely do not want to exclude them. Again, if there was interest to create their own team or to participate in a co-ed team, which exists as an opportunity, but I would hope that they would understand the competitive advantage that they would have, especially when it comes to transgender females, that they would not want to take away from the young ladies and their friends that ability to excel.
I don't know if you've heard of the Trevor Project, which is a national suicide prevention organization that focuses on LGBTQ youth. And they do a survey every year, and they found that in the past 3 years, suicidal thoughts among LGBTQ youth have been going up. In the past year, 45% have seriously considered suicide. And what I find most striking is nearly 1 in 5 transgender or non-binary young people have attempted suicide. Are you worried about that?
Oh, that's awful. No, that's awful.
What do we need to do to protect those individuals?
Well, we have invested more in mental health services in the schools, both K-12 and higher ed. I mean, we have policies to make certain that they're not discriminated against, that they're, free to follow, their path. And the number of suicide attempts and suicidal thoughts is increasing astronomically. I believe a lot of it has to do to COVID. So you're asking something that is straight to my heart and straight to what I'm trying to do, which is to ensure that every student, every child in West Virginia gets what they need and gets a good education. I don't think that it's going to be necessarily one thing that's going to fix it.
While Patricia Rucker says for her, this is not about restricting transgender youth, that's not the case for everyone.
My name's Terry Schilling. I'm the president of American Principles Project. We work to pass laws to protect and strengthen families, protect the innocence of children. And then we have a super PAC that goes and runs campaign ads for and against candidates based on their record protecting or hurting families.
Terry Schilling gets straight to the point. He believes there is a transgender agenda. He calls it transgenderism. And he believes that it's hurting American families. How are they affecting or impacting the American family?
Well, I'd say a few big things. The biggest one right now is education. In 2015, when Obergefell was decided at the Supreme Court, the arguments for gay marriage nationally were essentially love is love and we shouldn't be discriminated against. And I think Americans were okay with that for the most part. But the claims from our side were that this is going to lead to bad things. They're going to change education policy. They're going to start teaching young children about all these controversial things that parents don't want their kids learning about.
Schilling's organization is also focused on keeping kids from receiving medical treatment that allows them to make a gender transition. That includes hormone therapy and transitional surgeries.
So how much is the organization focusing right now on transgender legislation?
I'd say the vast majority of our work is focused on transgenderism and transgender legislation.
How have different campaigns focused on this issue over time?
We first started focusing on the transgender issue when North Carolina passed a bathroom bill known as HB2. And we noticed one big thing. The LGBT rights groups were all in. They were spending millions of dollars to unelect Pat McCrory, but the pro-family groups were nowhere to be found. And we raised around $250,000 to help out Pat McCrory. Ultimately, we fell short, but that was the start of this movement. Shortly after Pat McCrory ran and lost on that issue, Republicans didn't want to touch it. So APP went back to the drawing board.
Next, Schilling's American Principles Project focused on getting Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin reelected. They aired campaign ads attacking his opponent, Andy Beshear, for supporting the Equality Act. That would allow transgender girls and women to play on girls' and women's teams.
Andy Beshear supports legislation that would destroy girls' sports. He calls it equality. Maybe, but is it fair?
Governor Bevin lost, but Terry Schilling says that campaign taught them a lot. They tracked the money spent and the results.
And we found that we spent $600,000 and we shifted around 25,000 votes. So we knew that this was an issue that moved voters and actually changed how they voted. And we wanted to take that then into the 2020 election cycle.
It sounds to me like Kentucky was a control test. So have you scaled that up?
Yeah, so Kentucky was the experiment, and we learned a lot from there. And from there, we went into 2020 with targeted states that we wanted to go after. And, before 2020, we were under $2 million a year. But with the results of that Kentucky race, we ended up skyrocketing to over $7.5 million. And we ran ads in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, and we shifted over 100,000 votes throughout all of our efforts that election. It was our breakout year, and in the beginning of 2020, there was only one state that had passed legislation to protect women's sports, and that was Idaho. And after we spent all that money, we are now up to 18 states that have passed women's sports legislation.
Schilling has a theory. Politics is upstream from culture. In other words, culture doesn't just influence politics. Politics changes culture.
There's so much money being spent in politics directly communicating messages to voters every election cycle. And you can use those campaign ads and those voter contacts to educate the American people about issues, and then use that to pass laws that can also change the culture. So when you change the law, you can change the culture as well.
I'm trying to let that set in because you're really explaining something to me that I really haven't thought about before. So in one way, the ads and the focuses that a group like yours would have to possibly sway a candidate who supports a certain position, that seems to be one goal, but you seem to have a bigger goal, which is to influence culture.
It's twofold, right? So the biggest thing that makes these movements successful or unsuccessful is whether or not you can get politicians to champion it, right? Americans want to get along and they want to do the right thing. But if there's no one that's brave enough to champion an issue in public, then they take that as a sign that their position is not in the mainstream. And so what we do when we get a politician to champion our issues is we actually embolden our base.
Schilling says they aren't limiting their efforts to state battlefields. The American Principles Project has its sights set on a federal bill that would keep transgender women and girls out of women's sports for any team that receives federal funds.
What's the motivation behind bills like Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act?
Twofold. It's to protect the opportunities of our daughters so that they can compete, so that they can get scholarships, so that they can live a full life. But secondarily, we want to turn the movement around, the country around, on this harmful idea of transgenderism. So ultimately, we want to also defeat the transgender movement as a whole.
She had you balance on one foot and then jump and pull and balance on the other foot.
I am going to fall.
I am also going to fall.
I believe in you. How many reps?
Excellent question.
Erica Smith and her teammate, Ashley Majura, are getting in some extra practice time during their off hours.
I'm slow.
That's why you're a defender.
They both play on the lacrosse and field hockey teams at Sweetbriar College, a small private women's school in Sweetbriar, Virginia.
I've got 3 of those left, and that's it.
Well, that's all we need.
At 30 years old, Erica is a non-traditional college student.
We're so fast.
She was on active duty with the United States Army from 2013 to 2017.
I'm studying chemistry, psychology, and pre-med, and I'm a retired U.S. Army combat medic.
When Erica tried out for field hockey and lacrosse at Sweetbriar, she'd never played either before.
Walked on the field, I have no experience, and I'm just like, hey, teach me.
On paper, Erica is the athlete that people like Senator Patricia Rucker and Terry Schilling are worried about. Her gender assigned at birth was male. She now plays on women's teams. On the field, Erica is not the biggest or strongest player, but she is aware of that perception of competitive advantage.
Believe it or not, I am not the tallest person on either the field hockey or lacrosse team. I'm not nowhere near the most violent. Oh my God, my roommate, elbows people, checks people, is very aggressive. There's this weird glass ceiling for women of, oh, well, if you are too fast, too strong, too tall, too successful, then that's a problem. And so then I have to walk on the field deciding every day, do I want to hold back and disrespect my entire team because they're all giving 110%? It's still a thought I have every single time of, am I going to be perceived as somebody that is a threat to women's sports?
It's interesting when you said that you were not the most physical, you're not the biggest in stature. And when you said that, your teammate Ashley, she just smiled and looked. I mean, can you affirm that?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely true. I am the exact same height as Eric. I'm 5'8". There are definitely people way taller, way stronger. No offense.
No, and you,
and
like as a
people
defender, you
way,
destroy me.
Yeah, people way more aggressive. I can play pretty aggressive. We're all at different levels of physical fitness, different heights. It doesn't matter as long as you go out and give your best.
But do you see Erica as having an advantage?
Absolutely not. Definitely not. With love. Definitely not.
The bond that Erica has found with Ashley is just one of many she's formed playing college sports.
Hey, I feel like I belong somewhere. I finally feel, after starting my transition, actually most of my life, that I feel connected to other human beings and I can just unfiltered be myself, and we can have the inside jokes and we can have the discussions, or we can just have those connections, like the late nights sitting in each other's dorms room on the floor at 2 a.m. talking about whatever just because we needed to vent. I didn't have, like, going through puberty, like, I didn't have a mom to help me figure out how my body's working now, especially going through starting estrogen. And, like, yes, like, trans women get periods. We don't bleed, but we get, like, cramps, and we'll get the mood swings and cycles. And, like, I'll even sync up with the entire team. Like, our periods will sync up. Like, it's crazy. But, like, having a bunch of cisgender girls around that have been there, done that, gone through it, was probably one of the best things ever.
Now, when Erica says cisgender, she means girls whose sex assigned at birth was female and who still identify as female.
Even now, anytime I need help with something or don't understand how something works, people will rush to help me out and help me understand or teach me what it's like to do certain things, or how to like getting back into the dating world or getting in touch with your body.
Erica knew she was different at a young age, but pinpointing when she knew she identified as female is not that simple.
It's funny, it's one of the most common questions asked, but it's, in my opinion, one of the hardest ones to answer, because often we want a quick or an easy to understand answer. However, for me, like, I knew something was wrong since probably around 4 or 5, but I didn't have a word for it. I just knew that I didn't really like my body. I didn't really like it's not that I didn't like who I was. I just didn't like how I looked. I always felt like I belonged somewhere else.
In those years, did you have anybody to talk to?
I would slowly bring it up, and it was probably like 1 or 2 people in that time frame that I shared a little bit with, but never going as far as saying like I'm trans, just always kind of saying like, hey, I have these weird thoughts. And usually their response was, oh, well, okay, what do you want to do about it? I'm like, I don't want to do anything, because it's terrifying to me. Again, like, it's you see how people treat trans people, you see the rhetoric, you see what they say, and you're like, why would I willingly go and be a part of that when I could just be left alone?
Erica was 24 or 25, married and serving in the military, when she finally hit a tipping point.
I had then at that point learned what the term transgender was, and especially being in the military, growing up in a very masculine area, I wanted anything but that, because I knew that if that was who I was, I already felt like an outcast enough. And I'm like, I can't handle being so isolated to lose my family and friends and everything I've worked for. So I tried to convince myself that oh, maybe it's something else. So I started reading research papers. I started reading medical documentation, and especially having a background in it, I could understand what it was saying. And more, I was like seeing, oh, maybe I am this way. And I had a friend at one point say, you know, Erica, how many experiments do you have to conduct for you to realize that this is who you are? I finally accepted it. And while that was the most relieving part, it was probably, I knew going in, one of the hardest things that I would have to do because of where I was, the culture at the time, like how I was established in my life. I was married, you know, I was in the military, all this stuff. And I was like, well, I can decide to do something about it, or I can keep just holding it in. And I couldn't.
Erica went through a difficult divorce after she told her spouse.
One time they told me, you know, you're going to transition and you're acting like you have all these friends, but you're going to be that person that never gets invited to a party or a barbecue because you're still just going to be an outcast.
Erica did lose some friendships, and her family is still processing her transition.
I jokingly told them it took me like 24 to 28 years to figure it out. So from this date, you guys get 24 to 28 years to figure it out. But, you know, I'm not really as close with my family anymore.
I mean, do you get invited to barbecues? This thing that apparently your spouse said to you, has that in any way, shape, or form come to pass?
I don't think confirmed. It's sometimes in the back of my mind, but I can say that, you know, the wonderful thing about that I never expected about transitioning and finally starting my journey on who I was is when you're genuine and open with others, people can tell that, and they then become genuine and open with you, and they like being around that.
What are your thoughts about the climate in the U.S. and the wave of legislation that's targeting transgender rights?
I mean, I'm upset that we're dedicating so much time, energy, and effort into something that is mostly like based off of misconceptions and fear. The fear is being played up. You know, when you frame it a certain way, that's scary to think. Oh my God, these people are planning and plotting. It's like a really bad Blacklist episode. And when people meet us in person, all of a sudden, they're like, oh, you're not so scary. And it's like, well, no, I'm just a person. My favorite color is purple, and I sleep with a stuffed dog in my bed. Like, I love lilies and daisies, and, you know, I also love playing video games. Like, at the end of the day, being transgender is less than 1% of who I am, and there's so many other adjectives that I could use to describe me. It's hard enough to navigate this world, navigate the medical transition, figure out who you are in your journey, and now have to have the fear and worry of, like, I had so much anxiety this year waking up and seeing a news article knowing that I can't play with my teammates again. Like, I fought for this country as a disabled veteran. I lost friends for this country. I love this country. But I don't love where we're at right now. But I love where we could be.
On Us and Them, our goal is to learn more by listening to a wide range of perspectives from diverse voices. The question over transgender athletes' rights certainly presents a challenging set of issues for some people. But there's something important to acknowledge here. The transgender athletes that we spoke to for this story take a risk every time they speak publicly about their experience. So I'd like to leave the last word to them.
Why is it important for people to hear your story?
I think it's important for people to hear my story because a lot of folks can resonate with it and know also that there's a world possible where trans people are living and thriving and existing, and that it's not all doom and gloom. Like, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens, but that there is trans joy inherent in what we do, right? Like, our stories need to be out there and need to be told. We're not just some punchline of a joke, or we're not just some random story arc that goes away. We're here. We're always going to be here.
Is there anything special about my story? I don't think so. I'm just like everyone else. Every one of my teammates has their own special story, but if this could help one or two people out there have an easier time or feel comfortable knowing that there are people out there that will bring you in and be a part of a group that you can join a sport and your teammates can support you, then yeah. I mean, I'd love for them to be able to know that this is possible.
I don't want anybody to be in a situation like I was in when I was younger and to not have anybody out there who they can see in themselves. The more that we can humanize ourselves, that's when we can really resonate with folks, because our stories are not too different than anybody else's. When you think about it, we want all the same things that anybody else wants, right? Love, compassion, understanding, a right to education, just a right to thrive.
State laws banning transgender girls and women from playing on girls' and women's teams face lawsuits in a number of states, including West Virginia. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the new law that Senator Rucker supported. That ruling means, for now, one middle school trans girl can compete on the girls' cross-country team. If you are an LGBTQ young person who would like someone to talk to, or if you know someone who needs support, you can call the Trans Lifeline at 877-565-8860. You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this episode is me, Trey Kay, Emily Havik, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to Dr. Jessica McCauley, Joe and Sonny Monk, Laura Jones, Max Nagel, Erica Smith, and Taylor Edelman. Michael Lipton and Tristan Lozow wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, and the CRC Foundation. Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them. This episode of Us and Them was first released in July 2022.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.